Hey, what's up guys? Welcome back to Life on the Wrist. Hope you guys are doing well today. Last year, I went over this Mr. Porter post from July, August of 2021, and I went through some of the watches that were featured in this newspaper. Mr. Porter covers a lot of great watches throughout their website and YouTube channel, and obviously in their print content as well. And of course, there are a lot of watch brands that do advertising with Mr. Porter in the content that they create, but they also have covered some really nice watch content. A good example is the back of this. You can see this really beautiful Vacheron Constantin advertisement that is full page on the back there. And one of the things that I discussed when I went through this is that there was a really interesting article called "A Universe on Your Wrist" that they wrote in this edition. And what I thought I would do is actually go through, because I think it gives you some really great insight into the universe that really is a watch movement. A lot of the times it's what people really love about watches and find it super interesting that watchmakers really live in these tiny little places with all these really incredibly small parts that all come together to be what we really love when we look down at our wrist and see a watch that spoke to us and is being enjoyed by us on our wrist. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to flip perspectives and go over this article. A big shout out to Mr. Porter, as well as Mr. Alex Doak, who is the individual who wrote this article, as well as Mr. Doug John Miller, who went through through creating the artwork of this piece. So yeah, without further ado, let me flip perspectives so you can take a look at this article and learn more about this beautiful universe that the author described. All right, so like I mentioned, this is the Mr. Porter post. This is from July and August of 2021, and I went through this magazine previously, where we sort of looked at some of the watches that were featured in this magazine. As I mentioned, there was a beautiful Vacheron Constantin on the back of it. But what I really wanted to talk about was this article here that was written by Alex Doak and illustrated by Mr. Doug John Miller. It's titled "The Universe on Your Wrist." And essentially this is going over some of the different parts of the watch and describing it in a way that is pretty easy to understand, but also gives you some real insight into the immense amount of work that goes into each of these little tiny parts that a watchmaker ends up looking at. Along the side here, you can see this slim tickings section. We have gone over these watches in our other videos, so you can check out that if you want to get some more of the content from this magazine. But what I wanted to focus on was this article here. So I mean, immediately I think the thing that's pretty obvious is you have this really beautiful illustration by Mr. Doug John Miller, and you can see all these, obviously you have this central watchmaker that you see right in the middle here, and then you have all these other pieces that are sort of being worked. You see this little Mars bar here. This will be called out in one of the sections that we discuss. But all these incredible different details and these watchmakers sort of going to work and putting it all together. So to sort of go over the article, you can see Switzerland's finest watchmakers go to huge lengths to make minuscule mechanics which take at tolerances imperceivable to the naked eye. And it goes through some of these sections. So sort of goes through and sort of has a nice little introduction here into the fact that when a watchmaker actually puts on a loop, they're going into this really incredible universe where micromechanics all come together and allow for the regulation and understanding of how time works, which is I don't want to get too conceptual or philosophical, but time is a pretty interesting concept to think on, and trying to track it is basically what a watch is doing, even though it's something that a lot of us feel like we don't have enough of. But to get back into sort of the article here, you can see the first section is about the spiral balance spring, which is described as the heart of a mechanical watch. Weighing in at 2 mgs, it is as light as an ant and just as hardworking. And so if we go back up to the illustration, you actually can see an ant up here in the right corner. It continues on to describe how it oscillates 200 million times a year with unerring regularity, which is something that I think is kind of incredible to think of. It's oscillating at whatever speed the watchmaker sort of has it oscillate at. It's something that I've fallen in love with. As you know, I'm a huge fan of MB&F pieces, especially the legacy machine line, which a lot of the watches, the balance spring is brought to the surface, and it's sort of your main focus, and it's a very mesmerizing part. Describes how the balance spring is no thicker than a quarter of a human hair, and how it's produced by this one company, and the coil is basically perfectly done so that it oscillates. And to sort of again look at the illustration here, you can see this balance wheel up here with this beautiful coil. Moving on to the next part, where they sort of go into a section about the tiniest of nuts at just 0.3 millimeters in diameter with a 0.18 millimeter bore hole that depend on the smallest nuts in the world, which is a Guinness Book World Record, to balance a lot of their pieces. If we go back up to the illustration again, you can see this watchmaker's hand picking up one of the nuts that is used in the watch movement. Pretty incredible to think these little small things are keeping these watch movements together. But of course, these watches are using these micro mechanical parts, and so you have to have nuts that match. And then it says the tiniest nuts and screws to match. So profile turning or spinning bars of raw metal are roughed out by computer programmed drill bits with a fully 3D trajectory has become so sophisticated that a base plate screws can be machined without a tolerance of 3,000 thousandths of a millimeter, or 3 microns. So they're using very small parts for the nuts and screws, and of course it sort of goes into the fact that a lot of this is computer programmed and created by computers. However, there are some watchmakers that continue to use some of the apparatus that they used previously. Then it sort of goes into the finest decorations, where they talk about how metals are shaved from the horizontal planes of a movement by vertical rotating boxwood pads covered in abrasive paste. This allows for this Côte de Genève finish to give a real interesting definition to what a watch movement looks like. If I'm completely honest, when it comes to the illustration, I think my best idea is this piece, this little part up here, where this individual sort of giving a shine to maybe the full watch movement there. It's probably the best applicable section. And then here you can see a Mars a day, try 9,000 years. This is discussing how the battery of every mechanical watch is its winding barrel, and it is basically 20 to 30 centimeters of hair-thin nickel cobalt chromium steel alloy, which is coiled and stored in stores half a joule of energy. And this is essentially equivalent to a Mars bar that can power an ETA-based movement for over 8,700 years. You can see this Mars bar right here, and I think that this round section here is essentially supposed to be that coil, but the Mars bar is supposed to explain that. This Mars bar, the energy that you get from a Mars bar, is what a watch has, and it allows it to run for a very long time because of how efficiently the movements are made. It also discusses how a perpetual calendar works, which is quite interesting. There is a component in the watch that basically is the cam of 48 program wheels, notched 48 times to varying depths depending on the length of each subsequent month in a leap year cycle. This essentially gives you the ability to make your watch understand that what you are in a specific month and it should remain in that month for a certain amount of time. Quite incredible that could take place. Here it discusses the oils that are used to preserve and allow for the watch to run well. So it says a single thousandth of a millimeter of oil is enough to ensure movement takes over nicely for 5 whole years before friction drives each component to varnish and you're due another service. And it describes how synthetic lubricants are starting to be used, and that when it comes to the oil part of this, let's take a look here. So oils, I'm not quite seeing a section for oils, but if you do, I think I found it. You might have something there, but that's on the dial, so it might not be correct. If you find it, leave a comment about where the oil is in this illustration. And then the last section is rubies won't fail. And these are hard-wearing synthetic rubies are found at every critical point pivot. These red jewels twinkle through the watch's caseback are made the same way as sapphire crystals that cover them, and essentially stores the energy at critical parts of the movements. And I think this section here is where you're going to see these rubies at different places on that piece. So a really beautiful description of some of the small parts and integral parts of a watch movement. I think it's really well described and a beautiful illustration again of that. Hope you guys enjoyed listening to this. I'll flip perspectives so we can close out the video. I hope you enjoyed taking a look at that article and learning a little bit about the tiny little universe that watchmakers create for us in the watch movements they produce. I think Alex Doak and Doug John Miller did a really great job of describing and illustrating the incredible universe that is a watch movement and all the moving parts and how important they are to the things that we love on our wrist. Again, if you don't know, this is from the Mr. Porter Post, so be sure to check this out if you are interested in perhaps subscribing to this newspaper. They have a ton of watches that are featured in here. As always, like I mentioned, Vacheron Constantin on the back, and then there were some that were also featured really close to that article. You can also see some on people's wrists, which I think is kind of always a fun sort of little watch spotting opportunity for you if you are interested in this type of thing. If you are new to Life on the Wrist, be sure to hit that subscribe button so you are notified when we do upload videos to our YouTube channel. You can head over to lifeonthewrist.com for more watch content, as well as our social medias if you want to get some more daily content from us there. If you wouldn't mind hitting the like button for our videos, help us out with our YouTube analytics, and leave a comment what you think about this article. And with that said, guys, thank you so much for watching this video, and until next time.